Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, a wooden minifigure. Well, you may be wondering what I'm talking about. Well, there is a certain building block company that is famous for their minifigures. And I got to wondering, could you make one out of wood? So it turns out, I did a little bit of research, and as it turns out, you can buy these things. That company actually sells them. They're $155. I said, hang on a second here. I can make one for a lot cheaper than that. So that's what we're going to try to make today. And it's going to start off with the head. Well, I managed to salvage a piece of maple out of my burn bin. It measures 2.5 by 2.5, and it's 2 3/8 of an inch long. First thing I want to do is turn this thing around to a dimension of 2 1/32 in diameter. We need to place a couple of marks, and the first one will be from the end. This will be the bottom of our head. We'll place a mark at 7/32. From that mark, we will place another mark coming up from there at 1 11/16. And then the last mark from here will be 5/16 from that point. Okay, and we will continue and draw those all the way around our piece. Now these are the lines that will represent the shape of the head. So the first thing we need to do, this will be the neck area. We're going to turn this down to a dimension of 1 1/4 inch. And this section right here, we're going to turn this down to a dimension of 15/16. Once we get that done, we can lop off this end here, and then it's just some shaping of the main head. So let me get these ones turned down and I'll come back and see you. The next thing we need to do now is round this part here and round these corners here to give it that iconic head shape. And just like that, we have the head. So now it's time to make the body. So I checked up in the rack and I found this chunk of oak. And what I'm going to do is I need to cut it to specific dimensions. It has to be 1 9/16 of an inch thick. I need it to be 2.5 inches tall, and as far as the width goes, it needs to be 3 3/64. I know that sounds like finicky measurements, but you know what? It's the closest thing to scale it to one of the originals. So I'm going to cut this roughly, and then I'll come back and we'll carry on with marking out our shape. And there we have our rough blank for our body. Now, this is the wrong shape. So there's a little bit of layout that we need to do, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a vertical center line on here to reference some marks. And as well as this vertical line, we're going to put a center line on each one of our sides. Well, we now need to place another mark at the top of our block. On our front surface, we're going to come in from each side at the top, and we're going to place a mark at 25/64 of an inch. Now that may seem a little finicky, but this is where the Incra rule really shines. And from this point now, we're going to take a ruler, line up with that mark and this bottom corner, and draw a line. And this is the taper of our body of our mini figure. We will then take a circle template and just round off the top here with a 15/64 radius. All right, so now we can turn this over, and on our center line here that we've drawn on each one of the sides, measuring down from the top, we want to come down 25/32. And we will place a line there. And what we need to do at each point on both sides here is we want to drill a 3/8 of an inch hole halfway through our piece. And there are holes drilled. Now these will become, truth be told, our arm and shoulder joints when it's all said and done a little later on. We now want to flip this thing upside down. And what we're going to do, we're going to mark a center line right along here, and in 3/4 of an inch from either side, we're going to drill another 3/8 diameter hole about 1 inch deep. And those holes a little later will be used to join our pieces together. The last hole that we want to drill here will be right in the middle here. It will be a 3/4 inch diameter hole, and it will be approximately 1 inch deep. And at this point, I'm going to take it over to the belt sander. I'm going to sand the side angles here on this piece of oak, as well as our roundovers here. And then each one of these sharp edges on the corners, as well as along this top edge, is going to get a roundover with the router. I'm thinking a 1/8 should probably do the trick. And there is our body piece done, minus the arms. I did leave this bottom edge here all the way around crisp. I'm going to give it a light sanding later just to take a little bit of the sharp edge off, but I didn't do any roundover on the bottom. So all you need now is 1.5 inch length of 3/4 inch dowel. You can sit that in your hole there in the body, and then your head goes on top. Check that out. That's really awesome. Okay, so we're getting there. We've got the body and the head. Well, I've gone on the computer, and after scaling it out, I have made some patterns for our figure's arms. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out these arm patterns. We are going to use 7/8 of an inch thick maple as our stock. We're going to coat it with masking tape just to make the pattern removal easier, and we will adhere these arm patterns using spray adhesive. Once we're done with that, we're going to take it over to the scroll saw and cut them out. And with both of those cut, we're now going to take it over to the drill press and drill a 7/16 diameter hole right down through the middle of his wrist, I guess you'd call it, and it'll be 3/4 of an inch deep. And that's what these dotted lines here represent on the pattern. Well, at this point in time, you can remove your pattern, and it's time to do some shaping of this arm. We can't leave it just square like this. But what we want to do, I'm going to use a power carver. If you have a Dremel tool, you can use that. You can use an oscillating drum sander. You can use files, rasps, do it by hand, whatever you like, whatever method suits you. But basically, we're going to leave the inside edge, which is the edge of that will mount to our body. The bicep area, or the upper arm, is going to remain flat on one side. On the outside, it's going to be rounded all the way around, and it will be rounded at the top. It's also going to taper here, and it's going to taper so that at the top it is 3/8 of an inch thick. Now, as far as the forearm goes, we are going to carefully shape this so that it's round. You want to be careful not to shape into our hole, but we're going to shape it so that it's pretty much round as we can get it, and at the end of it all, it will hopefully be in the neighborhood of 25-30 seconds in diameter. Get it close, guys, get it close. 7/8 is close, a little less than 7/8 is better. See what you can do, and let's get this thing shaped up. And after a while of sanding and carving, we end up with something that looks like this. So our little minifigure's arms. So this is the left arm complete. I'm going to repeat the process and carve up the second arm for the right side. Well, what I've done is glued in dowels on the same angle to accommodate these holes. But the problem here is that when you put it in these holes, you see how it separates there from the body? In reality, you will have to drill them 90 degrees to this section to repair it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue in some 3/8 dowels into here to plug these holes completely. And once I get them dry, we'll flush cut them and I can re-drill those holes. And by re-drilling that hole, we were able to fix it so that now his arm functions properly. You can see that as it moves, it doesn't get that gap up in here that we had before. That's because it's running perpendicular to the angle of the body. Well, I've made a pattern for our hands, and this will be cut out of 7/8 inch thick stock. Now, I'm going to start off by drilling the center of our hands using a 1/2 inch bit. And then once I get that done, I can take it over to the scroll saw and cut around the rest of the perimeter of the hands. Now there's some shaping to do here. What I've done is I sat it up like this on another piece of board at the scroll saw, and I cut off a section here of the extension past our actual hand. It's 1/2 inch wide. So now the shaping that we need to do is we need to carve this down to be a cylinder or a dowel, I guess you'd call it. And it's going to be 7/16 of an inch in diameter. Get it as close as you can because you want it to be a snug fit into the end of our arm. Okay, well I have one shaped and it's taken quite a while. But once you get it shaped, it should be able to fit snugly into that 7/16 inch diameter hole that we drilled in the ends of our arms, and it should be posable. But you can see there how this is going to look. There's our hand and the arm. You can pose it because it's friction fit, and of course the hands as well. You can turn them however you like. So I'm going to get his other hand shaped, and well, you know what? We can move on from there. So I've taken my pattern for the legs and I've attached it to some scrap stock of maple that is 1 21/64 thick. Now before I can cut this out at the scroll saw, we need to take it over to the drill press. Well, we have a couple of holes to drill, and what we need is on the back side of our leg, we need to drill some 15/16 diameter Forstner bit holes. Now these will be 1/4 inch deep, and centered on the width of our leg, we need our first center hole placed at 1 1/16, and our second one, measuring from the bottom, will be at 2 27/64. And when we get that done, we can take it over to the scroll saw and cut out the perimeter of both of our legs. We now need something, of course, to attach them to, and that will be his waist piece, and there is a center piece that goes between here. So the first thing we need is for our waist, we need a thickness of 25/64. If you don't want to do that measurement, 3/8 will suffice. But we need that measurement to be 2 7/8 of an inch long and 1 9/16 wide. If you remember earlier, we drilled some 3/8 diameter holes in the bottom of our body. And what we're going to do is insert a couple of dowel centers, just like this. We're going to line up our waist piece so that it is centered on our body. And once we're happy with that, we're just going to give it a little tap with a mallet, and that will mark our holes. From there, we'll need to drill 2 3/8 diameter holes, let's say 1/4 inch deep. And at this point now, we have a couple pieces of 1 inch long 3/8 diameter dowel. They eventually will get glued into here so that our waist piece can get put in place. But what we want to do is I have a piece of 5/16 inch thick stock here. It's the same width as what our waist piece is. And I want to cut a dado here right in the middle of this, dead center. And it's going to be about 2/3 of the way into this block of maple that we have for the waist piece. And that piece will just fit right in there like that. We can put that aside, and we need to concentrate on this waist piece now. And what I want to do is I want to take our legs, and centered here on our piece, we're going to mark a profile here. We're just going to trace our legs. Just like that. We're going to take this over to the oscillating drum sander, And I'm going to sand this profile all the way along this piece. This will be the recess that our legs sit in when they are mounted on our replica here. And there is that piece cut, and our legs will sit up in here, giving them room to rotate up inside. So what I want to do now is in our legs, I have marked the center of each one of these round sections on our leg. And for that, I'm going to drill a 1/2 inch diameter hole about 1 inch deep. So I'm going to drill those holes, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, and now we will take a 1/2 inch dowel center. We're going to place it here, just like that in our hole. And what we want to do is we're going to seat our leg so that it is close to, but not tight against, that curve that we sanded. And once we're happy with that positioning, we can take away this piece and just give it a little tap. And right there at that spot that it marked, we're going to drill a 1/2 inch through hole. All right, so we can take a 2 inch piece of 1/2 inch dowel now, and we will place it in that hole. Our legs at that point can just friction fit over top of that dowel, and that way they will be movable. Well, what we need to do now is we need to mark this centerpiece for cutting, because at this moment it is way too long. So let me show you how we're going to do that. Well, this top of our piece here is going to remain flat because that goes in our dado. So what I'm going to do is I want to place our leg horizontally here, and we're going to trace around our leg just like that. And then I'm going to flip it completely upside down, and we're going to do the same. We're going to trace around our leg just like this. So that pretty much is the profile that we need to cut. We need to remember though that we're going to have a dado there. So you want to mark where that cut is going to be so that it will have material to bite into. So we'll just make a mark there and a mark right there, and that will be our cutout for our leg joint or our center support. So let me get that cut on the scroll saw, and then I'll show you how we're going to go from here. All right, and the last thing that we're going to do here is we are going to glue this piece here into our waist piece, and we will drill and pin it with some 1/8 dowels. You just want to be sure that this is glued on square to our waist piece. Well, it's now time for the final assembly, and I was going to leave this piece so it could just be connected and disconnected, but because I sanded up in here for the legs, I didn't leave enough material there to do that. So that's no big deal. We are going to glue that using those dowels that we drilled in for alignment. I have also decided that I want to glue in this center dowel here. And of course, while we're waiting for that dowel to dry up, we can just dry fit our arms in here because they are just friction fit. That's how they go in. That's how they adjust. And I'm going to draw a face on here and burn it on. Once that is done, it's just a matter of sliding these legs on. And that, my friends, is all she wrote on this one. And there you have it. A building block wooden minifigure. Guys, I am telling you, this has been quite possibly the most fun I've had with a project for a very long time. Although the process was time consuming and lasted over 2 weekends, it probably took me about 14 hours to make this thing all in all. It was time well spent. I enjoyed every single second of it. It was a lot of fun to be able to use calipers to scale it out to make this 5 times larger than what an original one is. Now, it's all in some of the details, like with the holes that are recessed in the back of the legs and that sort of thing. Guys, this thing is a load of fun. If you have a young one that is a fan of the type of building blocks that this is modeled after, what kind of a hero would you be to bring this thing in from the shop and give it to them as a gift? You would be like the best mom or dad ever. And I'm telling you, it's a blast. You don't have to do the face on it like what I've done here. That was just a little bit of fun. If you don't want to do that, don't do it. Leave it plain. It's up to you. Heck, you can even make little stickers and put it on for a face if you want to change it up. Now, truth be told, I didn't like how loose the leg joints were on this. There was friction there, but I was afraid that he was going to end up doing this, over time. So I did add just one ring of Scotch tape to each one of the dowels, and that tightened up the leg joints enough to make it stiff and posable. But guys, all this guy needs now is a finish, and he is completely done. And oh my goodness, I love this. This looks fantastic. This thing is spectacular. Guys, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell and that you won't miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. Now, while I do have the majority of this pattern on sketches and little scribbles, I am hoping that by the time this airs, I will have the entire thing as a PDF. So if you are interested in making one and you want to get a copy of the PDF with the measurements and the patterns for the arms and the legs and that sort of thing, if you want to get it all, I can provide that for you. Just drop me an email at acutabove_woodworking@hotmail.com, and I would be more than happy to send it your way. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in to today's show. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope you're going to try this for yourself, because honestly, I had such a great time making this. This was a load of fun. And honestly, guys, I hope that you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.